ICE agents wait at edge of delivery table to deport. Newborn. The man in the dark blue windbreaker was trying too hard to look like he wasn't waiting. He stood by the vending machine in the corner of the maternity ward lobby, his back to the rows of hard plastic chairs. He pretended to study the bags of pretzels through the glass, but his eyes weren't focused on the snacks. They were watching the reflection. The reflection of the double doors that led to the delivery rooms. His partner, a younger woman with a tired face and her dark hair pulled back so tight it pulled at her temples, sat in one of the chairs. She wasn't pretending. She just stared at the scuffed floor tiles. A thin silver chain with a small cross hung around her neck, and every few seconds, her fingers would go up and touch it, almost like she didn't know she was doing it. In the lobby, the air was thick with a different kind of waiting. It was the happy waiting. The nervous waiting. A man in dirty work boots paced back and forth, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice a low, excited mumble. Okay, I'm here. Just breathe, baby, you got this. An older woman, probably a grandma-to-be, sat knitting something tiny and yellow, a peaceful smile on her face. None of them paid any mind to the two quiet people by the vending machine. Why would they? They looked like any other tired couple, maybe waiting for their own good news. But they weren't. The man by the machine was Agent David Marks. The woman sitting down was Agent Lena Cruz. And the news they were waiting for wasn't the kind anyone celebrated. It was the kind that had a form number. A case number. A final destination. A young nurse with a cheerful pink scrubs top pushed through the double doors, holding a clipboard. She scanned the lobby. Family for Garcia? Family for Elena Garcia? The pacing man with the work boots whipped around. That's me. That's my wife. Is she okay? Is the baby okay? The nurse's smile widened. Everyone is perfect, Dad. You have a beautiful, healthy baby boy. Congratulations. You can come on back now. The man let out a whoop, pumping his fist in the air. The grandma put down her knitting, her hands flying to her face. There were tears and laughter and a rush toward the double doors. As they swung open, David Marks caught a glimpse down the bright, sterile hallway. He saw a door with a small, hand-drawn flower taped to it. Then the doors swung shut, and the happy noise was gone. The lobby was quiet again. David turned back to the vending machine. His reflection stared back at him. He saw a man with a 5 o'clock shadow at 10 in the morning, and eyes that looked as old and tired as the floor tiles Lena was studying. He didn't look like a monster. He hoped he didn't look like a monster. But he knew what was in the leather folder tucked under his arm. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A judicial order. It had a lot of official language, a lot of seals and stamps. But it only really said one thing. Elena Garcia was to be detained and processed for removal from the United States immediately upon her discharge from the medical facility. Immediately. That was the word that bounced around in David's head. As soon as she was well enough to leave, he and Lena would be there. They would show her the paper. They would put her in handcuffs. They would take her away. And her baby? The healthy baby boy who was just taking his first breaths in the world. The one with the hand-drawn flower on the door? The baby, the order said, would be placed in the custody of the nearest Office of Health and Human Services. A fancy way of saying the state. A foster home. A system. A life that started in a hospital room and was about to take a turn no one could have planned for. Lena's voice was soft, almost a whisper, so only he could hear. David. He didn't turn around. Yeah. How are we supposed to do this? David finally looked away from his own tired reflection. He looked at her, at the silver cross she was touching again. He didn't have an answer. He just gave a small, helpless shake of his head. They went back to waiting. The vending machine hummed. The lobby was still. And behind the double doors, behind the one with the hand-drawn flower, a new mother was holding her son for the very first time, whispering promises to him in Spanish, promises of a good life, a safe life. She didn't know that just a few feet away, two people were waiting to make sure those promises were broken. The sun was starting to set, painting the lobby in long, orange shadows. The happy families had come and gone. The grandma with the yellow knitting had left hours ago, probably home by now, showing off pictures of the new baby to anyone with a phone. The man in the work boots had never come back out. He was in there, with his wife and his son, living the best day of his life. David Marks was on his third cup of vending machine coffee. It tasted like burnt plastic and regret, but it was something to do with his hands. Lena had stopped staring at the floor. Now she was staring at the double doors, her face blank. A doctor in pale blue scrubs walked through them, stretching his back like he'd just finished a long shift. He noticed the two agents. He'd seen them earlier. He gave them a small, professional nod and headed for the exit. David stood up. He wasn't sure why, but he followed him out into the main hallway. "Doctor?" "Excuse me, doctor?" The doctor turned. He was older, with kind eyes and gray hair at his temples. "Can I help you?" David hesitated. He pulled out his credentials, flashing the badge. "I'm Agent Marks. With Immigration and Customs Enforcement." He hated the way it sounded coming out of his mouth. Like he was proud of it. He wasn't. The doctor's kind eyes went cold. Just like that. Warm to ice in a second. He looked at the badge, then back at David's face. He didn't say anything. "The Garcia patient," David said, his voice lower. "I was just wondering, how is she doing?" The doctor's jaw tightened. "She's doing as well as can be expected. She had a long labor. She's exhausted. Happy. She just fed her son for the first time." He stressed the last part. "Why do you ask, Agent?" David ignored the tone. "The baby? He's healthy?" "He's perfect," the doctor said, the words clipped and sharp. 10 fingers. 10 toes. A full head of black hair. His mother cried when she saw him. She cried because she was so happy. He paused, letting that sit in the air between them. "Is there anything else?" David wanted to ask more. He wanted to ask if she'd named him yet. He wanted to ask if she was scared. But he couldn't. It wasn't his job to know those things. His job was just to have the paper. "No," David said quietly. "Thank you, doctor." The doctor stared at him for a long moment. "I've been delivering babies here for 32 years, Agent Marks. I've held them when they took their first breath. I've held them when they took their last. But I've never had to hand one over to a stranger before." He didn't wait for a reply. He just turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the empty hall. David stood there for a long time. The coffee in his cup had gone cold. He threw it in a trash can and walked back to the lobby. Lena was standing up now. She was looking at the double doors. They were opening. The man in the work boots came out. His eyes were red and puffy, but he was smiling so wide it looked like it hurt. He was crying and laughing at the same time. He walked right past them, not even seeing them, pulling out his phone. "Mama. Mama, you're a grandma. He's here. He's so tiny. He has your eyes, I swear. Yeah, Elena's good, she's real good. She's sleeping now. They're both sleeping. I'm going home to get her that stupid pillow she likes, the ugly one she's been asking for. Yeah, I'll be back in an hour. I love you too, Mama." He disappeared through the exit doors, still talking, still laughing, still crying. David and Lena looked at each other. The husband was gone. For the next hour, Elena Garcia would be alone with her baby. No visitors. Just her and her son. Lena's hand went to her cross. "David." "I know," he said. They stood there in the empty lobby. The vending machine hummed. The clock on the wall ticked. Somewhere down that hallway, a young woman was asleep, her newborn baby in a plastic bassinet right next to her bed, the two of them together, peaceful and safe. And two strangers were waiting to end it. The clock on the lobby wall ticked past 9 at night. The hospital had gotten quiet. The only sounds were the hum of the lights and the distant beep of a machine somewhere. A janitor came through with a big yellow mop bucket and cleaned the floor around their feet without saying a word. David sat slumped in a chair now, his leather folder on the empty seat next to him. He hadn't opened it in hours. He didn't need to. He knew every word on that paper by heart. The name. The case number. The official stamp that turned a woman into a problem to be solved. Lena was standing by the window, looking out at the parking lot lights. Her reflection in the glass looked thin and tired. "She's awake," a voice said. They both turned. A different nurse stood there. This one was older, with gray in her hair and a face that had seen too much. She wasn't wearing the cheerful pink scrubs like the young one from before. Hers were plain blue. She held a clipboard against her chest like a shield. "The doctor told me who you are," she said. Her voice was flat. Not angry. Just flat. Like she was reading a weather report. "Mrs. Garcia is awake. She's asking for food. She's asking to see her baby again." They took him to the nursery for a little while to do some tests. David stood up slowly. "Is she well enough to leave?" The nurse looked at him. Really looked at him. Like she was trying to figure out what kind of man does this kind of job. Medically? She could sign herself out right now if she wanted to. But she doesn't want to. She wants to stay with her baby. She wants to go home tomorrow and start her life. David nodded. He picked up the leather folder. "We need to see her." The nurse didn't move. She stood right in front of the double doors, blocking the way. She just became a mother, agent. A few hours ago. Her body just went through something I don't think you could even imagine. She's sore. She's tired. She's happy. And in about 12 hours, if everything goes well, she'll be able to go home and introduce her son to the world. Lena spoke up, her voice soft. "We understand that, ma'am. We really do. But we have a court order. We don't have a choice." The nurse's eyes flicked to Lena. She noticed the cross around her neck. Something shifted in her face. Not much. Just a little. "Everyone has a choice," she said quietly. Then she stepped aside. "Room 218. The one with the flower on the door. Her husband isn't back yet. It's just her." David paused at the door. He looked back at Lena. "You stay here." Lena's eyes went wide. "What?" "No. David, we do this together. That's the rule." "I know the rule," David said. "Stay here." He pushed through the double doors before she could argue. The hallway was bright and clean. He passed rooms with soft sounds coming from inside. A baby crying. A father snoring in a chair. A TV playing some old movie. And then he saw it. The door with the little hand-drawn flower. It was done in crayon, probably by a kid from the family before. A pink flower with a green stem. It looked so small and ordinary. David stopped in front of the door. He could hear movement inside. Soft footsteps. A woman's voice humming a tune he didn't recognize. He raised his hand to knock. Then he stopped. His hand hung there in the air. Through the small window in the door, he could see her. Elena Garcia was young. Younger than he expected. Maybe 22 or 23. She had long black hair and a round, kind face. She was wearing a hospital gown and walking slow, holding onto the bed rail for support. She was moving toward a small plastic bassinet on the other side of the room. The baby was back. The nurse must have brought him while he was walking down the hall. Elena reached the bassinet and looked down at her son. Even from here, David could see her face change. It lit up. Her whole body seemed to relax. She reached in and lifted the baby out, slow and careful, like he was made of glass. She held him against her chest and started to rock, just a little, side to side. And she sang to him. David couldn't hear the words through the door, but he could hear the sound. A soft, sweet lullaby. Something from her own childhood, probably. Something her mother used to sing to her. She kissed the top of the baby's head and kept rocking, kept singing. David's hand was still raised to knock. He stood there like a statue. The leather folder felt heavy under his arm. Heavy like it was filled with rocks instead of paper. He thought about his own mother. She died when he was young. He barely remembered her face. But he remembered her singing. He remembered being held like that, safe and warm and loved. He remembered feeling like nothing bad could ever happen as long as she was there. Elena Garcia turned slowly, still holding her baby, still rocking. She faced the door. She looked up. And she saw him. Her eyes went wide. Not with fear. Not yet. Just surprise. A stranger at her door late at night. She clutched the baby a little tighter and stopped singing. David lowered his hand. He didn't knock. He just stood there, looking at her through the glass. She looked back at him. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know what was in the folder. To her, he was just a tired man in a dark jacket, standing in a hospital hallway for no reason. She gave him a small, uncertain smile. The kind of smile you give a stranger when you're not sure if you should be scared or not. David couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. The folder burned against his side. He took a step back. Then another. He turned around and walked away. He made it to the end of the hall before his legs stopped working. He leaned against the wall and put his head in his hands. He could still hear that lullaby in his head. He could still see her smile. When he got back to the lobby, Lena took one look at his face and her hand went straight to her cross. David? What happened? Did you do it? He shook his head. He couldn't speak. Lena stared at him. Then she looked past him, down the hallway toward room 218. The door with the flower was still closed. Inside, a mother was holding her son, humming a lullaby, not knowing that two people were sitting in the lobby waiting to take her world apart. The janitor finished mopping and left. The clock ticked. The night got darker. And David Mark sat in the hard plastic chair, his head in his hands, and wondered what kind of man he had become. The husband came back. David saw him walk through the main entrance just before midnight. He was carrying a small, ugly pillow. It was bright pink with some kind of sequin design on it, the kind of thing you'd win at a county fair. He also had a plastic bag from a fast food place and a look on his face like he was walking on clouds. He didn't even notice David and Lena sitting in the lobby. He just hurried past, through the double doors, toward room 218. Lena watched him go. He brought her a pillow, she whispered. David didn't say anything. He hadn't spoken much since he came back from the hallway. He just sat there, staring at nothing. 20 minutes later, the lights in the lobby dimmed. The hospital's way of telling everyone it was time to sleep. The vending machine hummed louder in the quiet. A security guard walked through, nodded at them, and kept going. You need to eat something, Lena said. David shook his head. You need to do something, she tried again. You can't just sit there forever. I'm not sitting forever, he said, his voice rough. I'm sitting until morning. Then I'm going to walk back down that hall and do my job. Lena steadied him. You couldn't do it before. David closed his eyes. I wasn't ready before. And now you are? He didn't answer. The night crawled by. Slow. Painful. Every minute felt like an hour. At some point, Lena fell asleep in her chair, her head tilted to the side, her hand still resting on the cross around her neck. David watched her breathe. She was young. younger than him by a lot. She had a kid at home, a little boy named Mateo. She told him once that she took this job because it paid well and she needed the money. She never said she believed in it. David had been doing this for 12 years. He'd done things he wasn't proud of. He'd knocked on doors at dawn. He'd put crying women in vans. He'd separated families. He'd told himself it was the law. He'd told himself he was just following orders. He'd told himself a lot of things. But he'd never had to do it like this. He'd never had to stand outside a hospital room and watch a mother sing to her newborn. He'd never had to wait for a woman to heal just so he could break her. Around 4 a.m, he heard footsteps. He looked up. The husband was coming back through the double doors. But he wasn't walking the same way. He was walking slow. His shoulders were slumped. The ugly pink pillow was gone. The fast food bag was gone. He looked like someone had let all the air out of him. He sat down in one of the chairs across from David. He didn't seem to notice who he was sitting near. He just put his face in his hands and started to cry. Not loud crying. Just quiet, shaking crying. The kind that hurts to watch. David sat up straight. His body tensed. Did she know? Had someone told her already? The husband lifted his head and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. He looked at David, really looked at him for the first time. You got kids? He asked, his voice thick. David hesitated. No. The husband nodded like that made sense. I got a son now. Born today. Most beautiful thing I ever saw. He laughed a little, but it wasn't a happy laugh. 10 fingers. 10 toes. A full head of hair. He's perfect. David didn't know what to say. Congratulations. Yeah, the husband said. Thanks. He wiped his eyes again. My wife, she's the strongest person I know. Came here when she was 17. By herself. Didn't speak the language. Didn't know nobody. She worked so hard. Cleaning houses. Working in kitchens. Saving every penny. She did everything right. Everything. David felt the folder beside him like it was on fire. And now? The husband shook his head. Now I gotta tell her something. Something that's gonna break her heart. He looked at David, his eyes red and confused. Her mother called. From back home. Her dad, he died. Just a few hours ago. She doesn't know yet. She's in there with the baby, happy, resting. And I gotta go in there in the morning and tell her that her papa is gone. David's stomach dropped. The husband stood up, shaky. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to say them words. He looked toward the double doors. She loved him so much. He was supposed to come visit next year. He was supposed to meet the baby. We had it all planned. He turned back to David. Sorry. I don't know why I'm telling you all this. Guess I just needed to say it out loud. He stuck out his hand. I'm Martin. David shook it. His hand felt cold and dead. David. Martin nodded. Well, David. Thanks for listening. He walked back toward the double doors, slow and heavy, like he was walking to his own funeral. David watched him go. Then he looked at Lena. She was awake now. She'd heard everything. David, she whispered. He stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. The sky was starting to get light. Morning was coming. Morning meant the doctor would come back. Morning meant discharge papers. Morning meant he had a job to do. A woman lost her father tonight. She didn't know it yet. She was in there, sleeping next to her newborn son, probably dreaming about the future. And when she woke up, her husband would tell her that her papa was gone. And then, a few hours later, 2 strangers would show up at her door with a piece of paper that would take her son away. David put his forehead against the cold glass. Lena came up behind him. We could call the office. We could ask for more time. Because of the death in the family. It's not lying. It's true. It just happened. We could say we need to wait until after the funeral or something. David shook his head. You know they won't approve that. They'll say it's not relevant. They'll say the order stands. Lena was quiet for a moment. Then she said something so quiet he almost didn't hear it. Then maybe we don't call. David turned to look at her. Her face was pale. Her hand was on her cross. What are you saying? Lena's eyes were wet. I'm saying, what if we just didn't? What if we walked out that door right now and went home and pretended we never got this assignment? What if we just let her go? David stared at her. Lena. That's not a choice. That's a crime. Since when do you care about that? She shot back, her voice cracking. You've been doing this for 12 years. You've done things that should be crimes. We both have. We've taken fathers away from children. We've sent people back to places where they get killed. And we called it justice. We called it the law. She wiped her face. But this is different. This is a mother who just lost her own father. This is a baby who hasn't even had his first full day on earth. This is wrong, David. You know it's wrong. David's hands were shaking. If we don't show up, they'll send someone else. Tomorrow. The next day. It doesn't matter. Someone will come. Then let someone else be the monster, Lena said. But not us. Not today. The double doors opened. Martin came walking out again. He was crying harder now. He must have told her. He must have gone in and woken her up and told her the worst news of her life. He walked right past them, out the main exit, into the parking lot. They could hear him through the glass. A sound like a wounded animal. David looked at Lena. Lena looked at him. The clock on the wall ticked to 5:47 in the morning. In less than 4 hours, a doctor would come and tell Elena Garcia she was healthy enough to go home. In less than 4 hours, David Marks had a choice to make. He looked down at the leather folder. The paper inside. The official stamp. The orders. Then he looked toward the double doors. Toward room 218. Toward a woman who just lost her father and didn't know she was about to lose her son too. He picked up the folder. He held it in his hands. And for the first time in 12 years, he didn't know what he was going to do. The sun came up slow and orange over the hospital parking lot. David watched it rise through the window. He hadn't slept. His eyes burned. His back ached from the hard plastic chair. The leather folder sat on the seat next to him, unopened. Lena was pacing now. Back and forth. Back and forth. Her footsteps squeaked on the clean floor. She'd stopped talking an hour ago. There was nothing left to say. They both knew what was coming. At 7:30, the hospital started waking up. New nurses arrived with coffee cups and tired smiles. A food cart rattled down the hall, someone delivering breakfast trays. The waiting room slowly filled with new faces. A young couple holding hands. An old man with a newspaper. Regular people with regular worries. At 8:15, the doctor with the kind eyes walked through the double doors. The one from yesterday. The one who'd gone cold when David showed his badge. He was holding a clipboard. He saw them sitting there and his face did that same thing again. Warm to ice in a second. He walked straight over. She's being discharged in 1 hour, he said. No hello. No good morning. Just the facts. Her vitals are good. The baby is healthy. She's ready to go home. David stood up. He felt old. Every joint in his body hurt. Thank you, doctor. The doctor looked at him for a long moment. Her father died last night. Did you know that? David nodded. Yes. We heard. Her husband had to tell her at 4 a.m. She's been crying ever since. She hasn't held the baby in hours. She's too broken. The nurses have been taking care of him. The doctor's voice was steady, but his eyes were shining. She came here with nothing when she was 17. She built a life. She fell in love. She had a son. And now, in one single day, she's lost her father and she's about to lose everything else. David didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. The doctor leaned closer. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. I've seen a lot in 32 years, Agent. I've seen babies born addicted to drugs. I've seen mothers die on the table. I've seen things that would give you nightmares. But I've never seen anything as cold as what you're about to do. I hope you can live with it. He turned and walked away. Lena stopped pacing. She stood next to David, both of them watching the double doors. 1 hour, she said. David nodded. What are we going to do? He didn't answer. At 8:45, Martin came back through the main entrance. He looked worse than before. His eyes were swollen. His clothes were wrinkled. He was carrying a small suitcase, the kind you'd pack for a short trip. He walked past them without looking up and disappeared through the double doors. At 9 o'clock exactly, the young nurse with the cheerful pink scrubs came out. The same one from yesterday. But she wasn't cheerful now. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red. She walked straight up to them. Mrs. Garcia is ready, she said. Her voice shook a little. She's in the wheelchair. Her husband has the baby. They're waiting by the exit at the end of the hall. The one that goes out to the side parking lot. David frowned. The side exit? Why not the main entrance? The nurse looked at him. Really looked at him. And for just a second, something passed between them. Something unspoken. She doesn't want to walk through the lobby, the nurse said. She doesn't want to see anyone. She's very upset about her father. We're letting her leave through the side door. For privacy. David stared at her. The side door. The one that led to a different parking lot. The one that would let them walk straight to their car and drive away without ever coming near the lobby. He looked at Lena. Lena's eyes were wide. The nurse held his gaze. I'll take you to her now. If you're ready. David's heart was pounding. His mouth was dry. This was it. This was the moment. He picked up the leather folder. He followed the nurse toward the double doors. Lena walked behind him, her footsteps slow and heavy. They went down the bright hallway. Past rooms with open doors. Past the nurse's station where everyone stopped talking and just watched them walk by. Past the room with the hand-drawn flower, its door now open, the bed inside already stripped and empty. At the end of the hall, there was a set of glass doors. The side exit. Beyond it, David could see a parking lot. A small blue car sat there, its engine running. Martin stood by the open back door, holding the baby in his arms. He was looking back toward the hospital, waiting. And there, in the wheelchair by the glass doors, sat Elena Garcia. She was smaller than David remembered. Younger. Her face was puffy from crying. Her black hair was pulled back. She wore a simple dress, probably the same one she'd worn when she came in 2 days ago. In her lap, she clutched a small plastic bag with hospital papers and a few free samples. She was staring straight ahead. Not crying anymore. Just staring. Like she was already somewhere else. Already gone. The nurse stopped a few feet away. Mrs. Garcia, she said softly. There are some people here to see you. Elena turned her head. She looked at David. Then at Lena. Then back at David. Her eyes were dark and empty. Like she already knew. Like someone had already told her. David stepped forward. The leather folder was in his hand. He could feel the weight of it. The weight of 12 years. The weight of every door he'd ever knocked on. Every family he'd ever broken. Every face he'd ever seen in the back of a van. Elena looked at the folder. Then she looked up at his face. "Please," she whispered. Just one word. So quiet he barely heard it. Behind her, through the glass doors, Martin was waiting. The baby was in his arms. A tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. 10 fingers. 10 toes. A full head of black hair. A boy who would never know his grandfather. A boy who might never know his mother. David looked at Elena. At her empty eyes. At the tears starting to roll down her cheeks again. He looked at Lena. She was crying too. Her hand was on her cross. She shook her head. Just a little. Just enough. He looked down at the folder in his hand. The paper inside. The official stamp. The orders. Then he looked through the glass doors. At Martin. At the baby. At the blue car with its engine running, ready to take them home. David Marks had been a good agent for 12 years. He'd followed every rule. He'd done every job they gave him. He'd told himself 1,000 lies to sleep at night. But he'd never held a baby. He'd never heard a lullaby through a hospital door. He'd never watched a woman lose her father and her son on the same day. He opened the leather folder. Elena Garcia let out a small sound. A whimper. Like an animal caught in a trap. David reached inside. He pulled out the paper. And then he did something that would follow him for the rest of his life. He tore it in half. The sound was loud in the quiet hallway. A sharp rip that made everyone freeze. Elena gasped. The nurse put her hand over her mouth. Lena just stared. David tore it again. And again. Until the official order with all its seals and stamps was nothing but a pile of confetti in his hands. He let the pieces fall to the floor. He looked at Elena. "Go home," he said. His voice was rough. "Go home and hold your son." Elena stared at him like he was a ghost. Like she didn't understand the words. "Go," David said again. "Now. Before I change my mind." The nurse didn't wait. She grabbed the handles of the wheelchair and pushed. The glass doors slid open. Cold morning air rushed in. Martin's face appeared, confused, scared, hopeful all at once. "Go! Go!" the nurse hissed at him. Martin didn't ask questions. He just moved. He helped Elena out of the chair and into the car. He ran around to the driver's side. The doors slammed. The engine revved. David stood in the open doorway and watched the blue car speed away. It turned out of the parking lot, onto the street, and disappeared into the morning traffic. Gone. Lena came up beside him. She was shaking. David. He didn't say anything. He just stood there in the cold air, watching the empty street. Behind them, the nurse was crying and laughing at the same time. She grabbed David's arm. "You have to go. Now. They're going to know it was you. They're going to come looking." David nodded slowly. He looked down at the pieces of paper on the floor. The order. The law. His career. Lena grabbed his other arm. "She's right. We have to go. We have to get out of here before someone calls it in." David let them pull him away from the door. They walked fast back down the hallway. Past the nurse's station where everyone was still watching. Past the room with the empty bed. Through the double doors. Across the lobby. Past the vending machine. Out the main entrance. The sun was bright and warm. Cars moved in and out of the parking lot. Normal people doing normal things. A world that had no idea what just happened. David stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. He looked up at the sky. He didn't know what came next. He didn't know if he'd go to jail. He didn't know if he'd ever work again. He didn't know anything. But somewhere out there, in a blue car driving toward a small apartment, a woman named Elena Garcia was holding her son for the first time since she learned her father died. And she was crying. But this time, they weren't sad tears. And for David Marks, right here, right now, that was enough.